Welcome back into the GSMC Sports Podcast. We've talked some Lakers Nuggets, just talked about some Sixers Knicks. Now I want to sort of dive into here on a little bit of the ugly stepchild, at least from the iconic night that last night was, because we had the Magic and the Cavaliers facing off. Now, not saying it was a terrible game necessarily, but in terms of the glitz and glamour that these other had with the incredible finishes, this one was a lot more of a defensive matchup, a little bit of a rock fight, and it was very low scoring as the Cavaliers came out on top in this one. The second straight game where neither team had scored 100 points. Cavs in this one, 96-86. Magic have been held to 83 and 86 points in each of their first two games this series. Now, you do have to give the Cavaliers some credit for the level of defense that they're playing and the strategy behind it. They were a top 7 unit in defensive rating throughout the regular season, and their play on that side of the ball did sort of dip off a little bit towards the end of the season, but right now they're back and are playing as good as they possibly can be up to this point. It seems like they are doing, in particular, a really good job of taking the paint away from Orlando, who that is where this team does sort of rely on getting their points. But on that note, the Magic haven't been a great offense this season, and it's because of the fact that they don't have the level of spacing that the majority of playoff teams do. They were 29th in the league in three-pointers made this season, and they were only ahead of the Detroit Pistons, who of course went on to have the franchise's worst record in its history. They shoot just 35% as well, and the Cavs are clearly just so unafraid to give up threes. They were letting up open corner three opportunities too, and they just weren't falling for the Magic. Jonathan Isaac was just standing in that right corner basically all game long, firing away. Very rarely did he have anybody in his vicinity really, and he went 1 of 7 from 3, 6 of those coming in that corner, pretty much uncontested. So this is a Magic team that I've already said, don't want to bury them too much because I feel like right now everything you can say about them is a little bit on the negative side. I have no doubt that Paolo Banchero is going to be a future star of the league. He got his first All-Star appearance this year, and he's going to be special for a while. He does, you saw he led his team in points, rebounds, assists, all of that during the regular season. So I think he's going to be great. But this is a Magic team that I wouldn't quite say they overachieved necessarily because they are talented. But to be able to, be in competition for one of those top seeds in the Eastern Conference in a year where they were more slated into that play-in tournament threshold, you do have to absolutely give them credit for it. They have things they need to work on, though, and that is just a fact that they need more spacing. They probably need, as much as Paolo has at least shown a lot of development as a playmaker as well, could probably benefit from a true point guard. And I like Jalen Suggs a lot. I thought that was going to be a little bit more of his game when he was coming into the NBA. Now he's more so just a 3-and-D guy, not necessarily creating for himself, but solid as a catch and shooter. I mean, I still look back at Markelle Fultz and the way that his career is unraveled. When he first got to Orlando too, I thought that he was going to be a perfect fit there with a fresh start, be able to help lead this upcoming young core, and he's just sort of fallen off the map for them. Didn't get a ton of minutes. He played briefly there when Jalen Suggs was dealing with his knee injury. Not sure what his status is going to be going forward. He was able to come back, but he could put no pressure on it when he was being carried off the court. I like Franz Wagner a lot, but It just seems like at times with him, the level of creation, now he can get downhill some, and maybe part of the issue is that the Magic don't necessarily have all that much spacing anyways to surround him with, but he went from scoring 17 points in the first half to going 0 for 7 in the second half, scoring just 1 point off of a free throw. And he himself isn't somebody who provides much from a spacing perspective either. But that's my take on the Magic. I do like them a lot. I like the future with them, but I almost feel bad because every time I do talk about them, at least in these past couple days, it comes off more negative than I would like it to. But I just don't think that they're ready for this moment right now, which is totally fine because they weren't expected to be a postseason team, and they are one of the youngest cores in the NBA. So, all that to be said about the Magic. And the Cavaliers here, I wanted to talk a little bit about whether or not they're different this year, because last season they were a very exciting team coming into the playoffs. They faced off against the New York Knicks in the first round, and really they just got punked. Physically, they got exposed from an offensive perspective in terms of sort of the redundance that we see with the Garland-Mitchell combo, along with the Allen-Mobley combo. But I mean, it is, we've definitely seen some steps in the right direction. If you want to go from the offensive perspective, one development, at least early on in this series, that I've been seeing that I am a huge fan of is the fact that Evan Mobley is being more aggressive. And it's not like he's going out there scoring 20 points in these games, but he's sort of willing to actually take it to Orlando more often. And a couple times, he's had to go up against Jonathan Isaac, who is one of the best defenders in the NBA, and it hasn't all been perfect for him necessarily, but I like to see a hungry version of him, somebody who his expectations have really fluctuated through the first few years of his career, but he does absolutely have a high ceiling. We already know what he can provide from a defensive standpoint, but if he can start to develop this offensive game, I mean, there are some, and I'm not going to dive into them right now because, again, I'm not trying to set the bar too high for him once again, but there are some names that his game does remind a little of when he is actually sort of hitting at his best that we know he can. But it's been him. It's been the fact that I feel like their wing play has been much improved this season from both Karis LeVert, who I believe is one of the most underrated players in the NBA, really. I know that the consistency of it isn't always there, but I feel like he is a great scorer off the bench for this team, can actually play make pretty well from a wing position, and just shows up with tons of energy. And Isaac Okoro as well, who still is not the perfect offensive player, not extremely refined necessarily, but has upped his three-point shooting every season he's been in the NBA. Now is shooting 39% from three, is shooting 40% from beyond the break, meaning not in the corners. So I think he's, been an important development for them once again. All of this being said, I still don't know if this is necessarily about them being how much better they are now, or if it's that the Orlando Magic maybe just don't have the offense to fully compete in a playoff series like this, where, the Cavaliers are going to have a much bigger task ahead of them. They are most likely going to be playing the Celtics in the next round, and like I've said, I think that they do have some pressure surrounding them a little bit in terms of the future roster construction surrounding this core. JB Bickerstaff, I think, is coaching for his job a little bit as well. But I think that, this has been a very encouraging start for the Cavs, where Donovan Mitchell, he drops 30 points in game one. Yesterday, he came out blazing in the first quarter at least. He cooled off from there, but again, it was a very well-rounded, performance from this team. And now keep in mind, they only put up 96 points. The Magic are an incredible defense themselves as well, so you do have to take that into consideration as well. But yeah, just most of their players, going out and providing some solid minutes for them. Can't be mad at them by any means. Again, expectations for them, I wouldn't say they are tremendously better than they are last year. I do still feel like they have some questions surrounding the future of this core, but hey, you take the wins as they come and you try and build momentum so that when they do go off on to, again, potentially face the Boston Celtics, who are the favorite in the conference, that they're confident in themselves. So let me know if you have any extra thoughts on this series as well. Probably going to be the least talked about series from this first round in general. We'll see if maybe Paolo is able to sort of elevate the Magic to any sort of heights. They're going to be going back to Orlando. I probably feel like this ends in 4 or 5 for the Cavs. But again, if you have any different perspectives, would be happy to hear them. But we are now going to be taking our final break of the show. And when we come back on the other side, I want to sort of switch gears a little bit to talking a little NFL, where we had a trade yesterday that broke during the show about the New York Jets moving on from quarterback Zach Wilson, and I want to sort of unpack all of that. So stick with us and we will be right back.